The story begins in the eastern continent, where the forces of the barbarians clash with the defending soldiers of the Eldoran kingdom. In the bloody battlefield, heads go flying as the powerful barbarians gain the upper hand and tear through Eldoran forces like paper. Still, the captain of the Eldoran troop, Seraphina, refuses to give up on her comrades. She rallies her troops to continue fighting and cut a path out for retreat. Even as Seraphina cuts through some barbarian soldiers, she notes that her side has taken too many casualties to have a chance at making it out alive. Suddenly, a new monster appears from the barbarian side. Vior, a giant barbarian elite, shreds through Eldoran soldiers and lands straight in front of Seraphina with his bloody blade raised high. Vior easily spots Seraphina as the seasoned captain among the common soldiers and challenges her to a one-on-one. Knowing that no one else can stand a chance against this monster's huge blade, Seraphina agrees to the fight, hoping to buy some time for her men to escape. She jumps high up and plunges down at Vior, who parries her attack while casually standing. Then, he swings at Seraphina with his immense power and sends her flying to the side. Seraphina lands on her feet and rebounds to launch another attack at Vior, and the two of them start trading blows in a heated exchange. Although Seraphina impressively keeps up with Vior's strength, his overwhelming power still forces her back. Left with no other choice, she uses her ultimate technique that casts a magic enhancement on her sword. Using all her remaining strength, she roars and takes on Vior's final strike. Just as the two swords meet, one of the blades breaks and goes flying into the ground. The Eldoran soldiers watch, stunned, as their captain holds a broken sword in defeat. Seraphina collapses to her knees, accepting defeat, and Vior sincerely praises her for holding her own against him for so long. Seraphina then asks him to kill her as a warrior deserves, but Vior refuses to take her life. Instead, he flashes her a sinister grin and promises that he'll take her alive and put her body to good use. After this ominous warning, Seraphina loses consciousness and wakes up in a dark prison cell, wearing a dirty rag and strong shackles. Shocked, she looks around and gathers her bearings for a bit. She then finally remembers that she was defeated by the barbarians and is now their captive. Once she remembers Vior's final warning, Seraphina gets terrified, wondering what kind of torture the barbarians will inflict on her. She wonders if they'll use her as a slave, or if they'll subject her to immense pain for entertainment. In the end, the scariest thought flashes through her mind, and she wonders if Vior wants to use her body as a woman. Since Seraphina is still an unmarried young noble, the thought of a brutish barbarian sullying her pure body puts her in serious anxiety. Then, Seraphina also realizes that her poor comrades were still surrounded by barbarians after she got knocked out, thinking that they all got slaughtered or taken captive just like her. She feels a crushing rush of despair. In the end, she feels the most worried for the common people of her kingdom, since without the eastern land, their crops will continue to die with no land left to plant. All of these regrets bring the experienced captain to tears, but suddenly, she hears another person's voice behind her. Seraphina looks around to see Circe, a female servant carrying some water with her. Seraphina takes a closer look at Circe and finds some pliers and tools on her belt, so she thinks that she's here to torture her for information. However, Circe doesn't mention anything about torture, and instead reveals that she's here to prepare Seraphina as the perfect trophy for King Vior. She then chains Seraphina to the wall to prevent her from moving, and the knight captain braces herself for some brutal torture. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, Vior thinks about visiting Seraphina, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Back at the prison cell, Seraphina is now nude while Circe washes her body with a wet cloth. Once she finishes cleaning, Seraphina asks Circe why she's going through so much ceremony for a slave like her. Circe points out that Seraphina's body was filthy from the battle, so she was simply cleaning her up. Circe then makes a casual comment about her appearance, surprised that she's the woman who battled her master for so long. Circe explains that she was expecting Seraphina to look more muscular since she can hold her own against Vior, but instead, she's simply a feminine girl. Hearing this, Seraphina's ego gets bruised since she thinks a knight like her has no time to look girly or cute. Circe understands her emotions, but she reveals that Vior really likes how Seraphina looks. This statement leaves Seraphina even more confused, but Circe refuses to explain further. Instead, she quietly warns Seraphina that she's never leaving barbarian territory again, all while holding a sharp knife in her hand. Seraphina thinks that her end is finally near, and she desperately struggles against her restraints, hoping for a miracle. spectacle. As Circe gets closer with the sharp knife and cold metal pliers, Seraphina finally gives up and closes her eyes. However, for some reason, Circe only cuts her restraints and trims her fingernails and puts a dress on Seraphina's body. As she opens her eyes, Seraphina notices the strangely decent clothes, and she realizes that her dress is scented with perfume. She wonders why on earth the barbarians would give their prisoner a scented robe, and wonders if they're preparing her for a sacrificial ritual or something. Before she can ask Circe, she hears a loud roar coming from the surface above the dungeon. Circe confirms that Vior is here, and soon, the massive barbarian king lumbers into Seraphina's prison cell. After entering the cell, Vior formally introduces himself as the son of barbarian great chief Olden One Eye. Meanwhile, Seraphina observes his massive body and golden eyes, realizing there's no way he's a human being. She then recalls a story from her grandfather about an expedition against the barbarian soldiers. Even back then, the powerful brutes easily overwhelmed the human forces and ripped their hearts out for their rituals. Thinking she's about to face the same fate, Seraphina tells Vior that she's not afraid of anyone, and she dares him to do whatever he wants with her. Hearing this, Vior wonders what she's talking about since he has no plans of sacrificing her. He finally explains the real reason why he captured her was to take her as his bride. With just these few words, Seraphina's world turns upside down, and all the anxiety in her mind rushes to her face in the form of a beet red blush. At first, she's too shocked to fully understand what's happening, so she asks Vior if this is a prank. When Vior explains he truly wants to marry her, Seraphina completely loses her mind. She asks him why he'd marry an enemy, so Vior explains that his barbarian race has no problems with loving their enemies. Then, he goes into a state of fiery passion as he recalls the traditions of his proud ancestors. Ever since the dawn of the barbarian race, their strongest kings would always marry a female knight to honor their passion for the sword. Despite this explanation, Seraphina still refuses to become his wife. The sneaky barbarian reminds her that she told him to do whatever he wanted with her, so Seraphina is left trapped by her own words. Then, Vior also explains that he's not just marrying her for the sake of a cultural tradition. He recalls their fight on the battlefield, where he felt the sincerity of Seraphina's passion for her sword. Facing such a powerful woman, he immediately fell in love with her and decided he'd marry her no matter what. After hearing Vior's sincere confession, Seraphina is too flustered to respond, so he turns around to leave the room. Before leaving, Vior promises that he won't force her to marry against her will, so she can carefully consider her decision. After he finally leaves the cell, the shell-shocked knight wonders what's going to happen to her in this crazy dungeon. While waiting for her marriage, Seraphina recalls a memory from 7 years ago. Back then, her brother Sidious notified Seraphina that she was named as the captain of an expedition to the barbarian lands. Seraphina agreed and started leaving to attend her duties, but Sidious stopped her to hand over an invitation to a noble banquet. She was confused and wondered what her brother wanted, so Sidious reminded her that she was still a noble lady with a reputation to uphold. Seeing her brother's intense stare, Seraphina stood straight and immediately accepted the invitation. Later, she dressed up in pretty clothes and arrived at Countess Ildhol's mansion for the banquet. Seeing Seraphina dressed up in normal clothes, the nobles around her started making comments about her profession. In hushed whispers, all of the venomous elites made horrible remarks about Seraphina's appearance, wondering if a delicate lady like her would ever be worthy of leading seasoned warriors in battle. Even though they all knew her real strength, the nobles thought it was a waste for a woman to be as strong as her. Seraphina felt overwhelmed by all the negative comments, so she went to a balcony for some fresh air. Then, a few young ladies went out and asked her to join them instead of sulking alone. As the four of them sat together, the young ladies asked Seraphina if she was scared of her dreadful job. Hearing stories of monsters and dragons, the ladies wondered if Seraphina would be okay in such dangerous situations. Sera smiled and explained that dragons were just imaginary creatures, but the ladies reminded her that she's still going to face the barbarians. Knowing the tales of the brutal barbarians and their horrible treatment of female knights, the ladies tell Sera to stay at home to avoid a brutal end. However, she slams her hands on the table to silence them all. Sera confidently declares that their kingdom has been trying since day one to conquer the eastern lands. In her mind, only by conquering the east could their kingdom gain enough resources to feed their people, so she was ready to fight against the barbarians. Still, the young ladies reminded Seraphina that even the prestigious Princess Wisteria, who was her role model, went missing after she faced the barbarians. All of the ladies advised her to remain home and marry a suitable husband, but Sira grew tired of their negative attitude and left the gathering. Afterward, as she headed back home on her carriage, she felt disgusted by the nobles, who dined on luxurious meals while their common people starved on the streets. On her way back, she encountered a poor man being attacked by 3 guys. The boys themselves were starving peasants, forced to rob others for the sake of their survival. Still, Sira jumped in to protect the poor man and warned the robbers to back off. With no way out, the boys tried attacking her with their farming tools, but Sira easily defeated them. The boys wondered if their lives were about to end, but suddenly, Sira took pity on them and gave them her precious necklace. Shocked, the boys thanked her for her precious gift and promised never to hurt another person again. After they left, Sira felt her heart clench from pain at the state of her people. Internally, she made a promise to her people that she would return victorious from the east and bring peace to their kingdom. A few days later, before leaving for the expedition, Sira paid respects to the missing princess Wisteria. Suddenly, her brother popped up from behind, furious that she couldn't find a husband again at the banquet. Seraphina reminded Sidious that she was about to fight for their kingdom, but the proud prince firmly told her that women could never fight on the front lines. As he angrily shouted her name, suddenly, the prince's voice shifted into Vior's. Vior advanced towards her and stretched out a hand, determined to make his wife no matter what. As the barbarian grabs her, Seraphina's nightmare finally ends, and she wakes up in a cold sweat. She then hears a powerful snore coming from nearby, and she notices Vior sleeping right next to her. In an instant, the sight of Vior's powerful body brings Seraphina to her senses, and she draws a cold breath, terrified of handling him as his wife. In a few moments, Sira manages to recollect her scattered thoughts. She screams at Vior for being with her, but he explains that they're currently in his bedroom. Hearing this, Sira gets even more outraged and asks why Vior is naked with her. He ignores her question and instead acts like he's relieved that she's feeling fine after last night. The image in Sira's mind continues to grow even worse, and she thinks that this brutish barbarian forced himself on her. Unable to bear the affront of her dignity, Sira tells Vior to just put her out of her misery. Vior stops her, wondering why she wants to die instead of killing him. Sira points out that a barbarian has no idea what a woman's honor means back in her kingdom, so he has no right to judge her feelings. She also reminds him that she just got defeated in battle, so her honor as a knight also took a huge blow. Vior understands her frustration, but he still thinks it's not enough to justify ending her life. Instead, he encourages her to move on and appreciate her blessing of life. As the two of them argue, Circe enters the room with some clothes for Vior. She realizes that Sira had a misunderstanding and explains that she overdosed on a sleeping drug they gave her. Since Vior didn't expect the drug to be so strong, he felt worried and took her to his own bedroom to watch while she rested. Finally, Sira realizes that Vior simply took care of her instead of compromising her chastity while she was unconscious. Still, she gets mad at him for creating such a misunderstanding. Vior once again glosses over her anger like it's nothing, and instead focuses on getting breakfast. Once he's finished changing clothes, he leaves to eat and tells Sira to come out whenever she's ready. After Vior leaves the room, Sira collapses to the floor, overwhelmed by all the emotions she just experienced. She feels ashamed that a proud knight like her is relying on her worst enemies for food and shelter, and remembers the teachings of her grandfather. Despite training his own granddaughter, Sira's grandfather also felt bad that she was born a woman. Even he told her to marry a husband to find her happiness, just like her brother Sidious. Having heard so many demoralizing words, Sira realizes that Vior is the only person who appreciated her knighthood and found it attractive. Still, her ego refuses to let her accept his love, and instead focuses on having the breakfast prepared for her. Being a prisoner of war, Sira thinks that Vior will give her an awful breakfast to humiliate her. However, when she actually goes out, her jaw drops at the sight in front of her. Seeing the giant slab of roasted fatty meat, she starts foaming at the mouth since her impoverished nation could never afford so much meat. Vior thinks that Sira must be hungry, so he gives her 10 pounds of meat, thinking it's a normal size for human knights. In reality, the chunk of meat is bigger than Sira's torso, which is more meat than she eats in an entire year. Sira thinks that Vior is trying to bribe her into accepting him with this delicious feast, so she swears that she'd rather die than accept this gift. Unfortunately, her stomach roars in protest, so Sira gets embarrassed enough to ask for death again. Vior gets confused why she seeks death at every minor inconvenience and reminds her that if her stomach is growling for good, it means that her body wants to live. Finally, he tells her to stop overthinking and just accept the meal. Meanwhile, Cersei goes to Syrah and explains that although Vior is acting all nonchalant, he actually went out to hunt this meat specifically for her. She reminds Syrah that Vior is also a noble among barbarians, so if she refused his kind gift, it would be bad etiquette. Syrah takes this bait to accept his gift, and when she finally takes a bite, the juicy meat instantly captures her heart. Syrah literally starts crying since she has never eaten such tender meat before, and Vior notices how much she's enjoying it. As he notices her, she perks up and acts like the food is just okay. Then, she reluctantly forgives Vior for causing her the misunderstanding in the morning. After that, Syrah also gets curious about the creature he got the meat from. Vior explains that the creature has already been butchered, so his men are cleaning up the rest of its hide outside. Syrah peers out of the window, thinking that it would be some sort of juicy cattle. Instead, she's greeted by the sight of a vicious dragon. Shocked, she wonders if these are the dragons from legends which are supposed to breathe fire. Vior chuckles, explaining that although fire-breathing dragons exist, this one is just a herbivore. Then, he notices Syrah polishing off all the meat even though she was shocked about its source. Once Syrah finishes eating, Vior asks her to go outside with him. Syrah still doesn't trust him, so she feels hesitant about going out. Vior wonders if she's simply scared of the beasts she'll see in the foreign land, so she gets angry and accepts his challenge. As Syrah gets ready to go out, she still warns Vior that she doesn't trust him. He accepts her warning, but he still thinks that she will love the scenery outside. Soon, as Syrah steps out of the house, she is stunned to see a peaceful meadow thriving with wildlife. Vior notices her surprise, so he explains that although their battlefield was a wasteland, the rest of barbarian lands are full of life. Then, Vior starts walking to show her another sight, so Syrah mentally prepares herself for the surprises up ahead. While they take a walk through the forest, Syrah curiously looks around at all the wildlife around them. Up above, she spots a dragon flying in the sky, so Vior explains that they're simply a normal animal living in their lands. Although it's difficult to hunt dragons, they usually don't bother the barbarians as long as they don't venture into their lairs. Syrah is annoyed that Vior is treating these terrifying beasts so casually, but he reminds her that she just ate one for breakfast. Embarrassed, Syrah grows silent and continues walking. Soon, she hears a soft humming sound in the distance and wonders what it is. As she gets closer to the sound, she gets shocked to see a pristine, clear waterfall. Shocked, Syrah blurts out that she's never seen one before, so Vior wonders if her kingdom doesn't have any waterfalls. Syrah grows defensive and starts to deny it, but then she remembers that the Eldoran kingdom truly does not have these natural sights. Vior feels bad and reassures that he only wanted to show her the beautiful waterfall, not brag about his land's resources. Then, he suddenly takes off his shirt and tells Syrah to do the same. Shocked, she wonders why, so Vior tells her that they must get into the water together. With her perverted mind, Syrah starts to picture some illegal activities, but Vior explains that he simply wants her to take a bath. Still, she reminds him that a man and a woman bathing together is completely unacceptable. Vior tells her the barbarians don't share her culture, so he doesn't care if they're together. Cersei also gets close to Syrah and reminds her that she hasn't had a bath after her bloody fight on the battlefield. She points out that if she doesn't bathe soon, her grimy body will stink up their entire place. Finally, Syrah agrees to take a bath, but she sends Vior somewhere else so he can't see her. Cersei accompanies Syrah to the bath, so she thinks that she's keeping an eye on her. However, Cersei tells her that she's actually watching her to ensure her safety. Syrah feels confused, but suddenly, a massive snapping turtle pops out in front of nowhere. Terrified, she clings to a rock, and Cersei tells her that there are many more weird creatures here that will scare her. Still, she wonders why Syrah is so scared since these creatures are peaceful animals. Suddenly, Syrah notices a bunch of eldritch monstrosities that look more like something out of horror stories than animals, and she runs away from the terrifying waterfall. Cersei feels worried about her, but she doesn't give chase when she realizes where Syrah is headed. Meanwhile, after Syrah stops panicking, she realizes that she left her clothes back at the waterfall. Suddenly, a bird cries loudly, which breaks her train of thought. Then, Syrah prepares to head back to get her clothes. However, a strange man calls out to her, so she wonders if it's finally time for her to lose her innocence to some strange barbarian. As the man approaches her, she instinctively backs off and tells him to stay away. He refuses to listen and gets closer, so Sira finally catches a glimpse of his handsome face. She starts comparing the handsome stranger to the men back in her kingdom, but then she remembers that she's still naked in a towel. Sira tells the man to stay back again, but he remains standing in place. Instead, he notices how pathetic she's looking and figures out that she must have run away from her bath after getting scared. Thankfully, the young man doesn't mock her for being scared. He reveals that his mother was also a woman from the West, so she would get scared in the bath just like Sira. His mother used to tell him stories about her kingdom, which lacked wildlife and nature, just like Sira's homeland. Surprised, Sira wonders if this barbarian's mother was a missing female knight captured during her grandfather's expedition. While she's lost in her thoughts, the young man puts his own clothes around her. Then, he tells her to go back with him so they can find her clothes. Sira feels surprised that a barbarian could be such a gentleman, and wonders if Vior is just a special, deranged case. Meanwhile, the man notices that her face is red, so he gets close to check if she has a fever. Being a noble maiden, Sira feels completely flustered by his touch. The man thinks that her fever is too intense, so she can't hike all the way back down the mountain. He scoops her into his arms to carry her down. Soon, Circe finds both of them standing together and wonders how her master Vior managed to tame Sira so easily. Hearing his name, Sira finally realizes that the young man holding her is none other than Vior with a shaved beard. He grins, pleased to see how shocked she is. Enraged by his deception, Sira slaps Vior, who happily praises her for producing so much more. As they walk back home, Circe wonders if Vior will be okay, while Sira warns him that she would have challenged him to a duel if she had her sword. Then, she blames him for her panic since he brought her to such a dangerous area. However, Circe explains that the wildlife around them is all peaceful, since Vior personally patrols the area to make sure it's clear of any dangerous beast. Vior also explains that he bathed alone since Sira wanted privacy, or else he would have protected her. Sira then wonders if creatures like dragons are dangerous enough to guard against. Vior explains that although dragons are strong, they're usually cowardly and they don't provoke people by themselves. However, Circe points out that only Vior is strong enough to consider dragons cowards. He then turns to Sira, pleased that he got to see a new side of her. Embarrassed by his attention, Sira forgives him as thanks for the beautiful scenery and leaves the area in a rage. On the way back home, she thinks it won't be too bad being Vior's wife, since he's so handsome without a beard. Unfortunately, just a few days later, she finds him back with a full beard, putting his looks back to square one. A few days later, Sira impatiently listens as Vior invites her to a meeting with his clan members. He shows her the meeting venue, which is the barbarian race's oldest and largest settlement, called the Lakeside Village. Sira notes the village's location, but then she wonders why Vior is leaking potential military intel to her. She wonders if Vior is underestimating her and reminds him that she could always escape to her homeland and leak this information to her military. As Vior hears her warning, he starts laughing loudly. He reminds Sira that she was love-struck with his shaven face just a few days ago, so there's no way she'd want to hurt him. He also thinks that he can easily make her his wife, so he's not worried about her leaking any sensitive information. While the two of them argue non-stop, Circe notes that they're already acting like a married couple. After some time, they all reach the meeting spot, where Sira finds herself surrounded by 100 intimidating men. Armed to the teeth, every single one of the seasoned barbarians begs Vior to give them a chance at testing their blade against the female captain. Sira thinks that her time has finally come since the barbarians want to kill her as revenge for defeating their comrades. However, Vior tells the barbarians to back off and give her a proper welcome into their tribe. At their leader's command, all of the hot-blooded barbarians calm down and give Sira some space. Seeing their cheerful looks, Sira wonders why they're all gathered here if they didn't want to kill her. Vior explains that they're simply here to give her a welcome, hoping to get a sparring match with her. This confuses her even more, and she asks Vior why none of the barbarians want revenge. To answer her question, Vior asks the barbarians themselves if they hold any hatred for Sira. All of them seriously declare that they bear no ill will, and they line up in a warrior's formation to welcome her into the tribe. Sira still doesn't trust the barbarians, thinking that they're just following their leader's orders. Still, she follows both Vior and Circe into the formation. While they're walking, suddenly, one of the barbarians bursts into tears and breaks formation behind Sira. Inspired by her bravery, he praises her for her incredible display display of martial arts on the battlefield. Sira is completely speechless as more barbarians begin chiming in, praising both her beauty and skills. She gets completely flustered by all this praise from her enemies, but Vior reminds her that all barbarians respect strength no matter who it belongs to. Stunned, she continues following him deeper into the village. While walking around, she observes a peaceful community engaging with animal processing. Suddenly, Vior stops in front of a house where water is being boiled. He tells Cersei and Sira that they'll stay in this house while he handles a meeting with the elders. Then, he announces his presence to the house residents. Soon, a kind lady pops out of the house, wondering what Vior wants. He introduces Sira as his wife to her and tells her to take care of Sira while he's gone. Surprised, the lady instantly falls for Sira's charming beauty. She drags her inside to take care of her, not even bothering to listen to the poor girl's complaints. Inside, the lady apologizes for being so forceful, but Sira forgives her. Then, she calls to her son, Gatter, and orders him to bring some medicinal herbs for her. As the little boy struggles to rummage through a big box, his mother holds up the cover for him to help him search. Soon, he pulls out a herb pouch, and the lady brings it over to some boiling water to make tea. Sira wonders if it's normal for barbarians to put herbs in their tea, and the lady nods. Then, the woman next to her notes that they'll need more boiled water to make enough tea for everyone. She sends her kids to grab some more firewood. So Sira is impressed that the young barbarian children are already taught to be so strong and independent. The kids' mother doesn't think much of it, saying that they're just copying their elders. Then, once the tea is done, Sira takes a sip. She admits that the tea is better than she expected, with the herbal taste refreshing her body. Cersei thinks that the herbs taste good because they come from the special sacred tree. Once Sira finishes her cup, she eagerly asks for another one. Afterward, she notices that the two mothers living in the house aren't related. She wonders if they're the only people living in the house and asks if their husbands are working in the military outside. However, the woman surprises her by revealing that both of them are widows. She explains that their husbands lost their lives in a battle against the West, so Sira feels guilty about the crimes of her own people. Even though she knows that the Western army was fighting to get resources for her own people, Sira still feels bad that they ruined innocent lives. She apologizes to both mothers for her army, thinking they have every right to be angry at her. However, the barbarian woman feels confused because she thinks they want revenge. Sira reminds them that it was her people who killed their husbands and points out that it may have very well been herself. Hearing this, the women finally grow silent. Then, the eldest of them speaks out. Although she feels sad that her youngest son couldn't see his father's face, she still thinks it's a blessing that he was present for his father's funeral. Ever since then, she remained grateful for her son and continued to raise him with love and care. She also points out that if it weren't for war, barbarian men would lose their lives in other risky adventures like caves, monster fighting, or dragon hunting. Even if they didn't lose their lives, the barbarian warriors could end up disabled forever. So she thinks that it's normal for their women to lose their husbands so often. Hearing this, Sira is completely stunned, and she wonders if all barbarians treat the loss of a person's life so casually. Suddenly, an alarm bell rings out in the town as the guard towers detect an incoming attack. Inside the house, Cersei realizes what's happening and warns everyone that they're under attack. Before anyone can react, a flying creature bursts into the house from above. Once the smoke clears, Sira finds herself staring at a winged dragon with a large beak. Cersei notes that the dragon is called a Tsukubaikshi, and it's attracted to the smoke from burning firewood. Sira realizes that their tea party caused this creature to attack, but Cersei points out that the dragons don't normally invade their village since they know the warriors would kill them. Unfortunately, they've got no time to investigate. Since Gatter gets scared of the dragon and starts crying in his mother's arms, the sound of the boys crying grabs the dragon's attention, so Sira gets ready for a fight. Cersei tells Sira to escape the village since she's Vior's precious wife. However, Sira firmly refuses. She gets angry at Cersei for treating the lives of her other people as expendable and focusing on just a single other person. She then reminds Cersei that she's not a fragile princess to be shielded. With her pride as an Eldoran knight captain, Sira bravely faces the dragon with a pair of hot tongs. As the creature roars at her, she knocks it back by using the tongs as a baseball bat. Cersei feels shocked and warns Sira that she can't defeat the dragon with a measly cooking tool. However, Sira doesn't want to argue anymore, and she tells Cersei to just run away. She also also notes that the dragon's strike wasn't nearly as powerful as Vior's sword, so she feels confident that she can defeat it. Determined to protect the people behind her, Sira jumps behind the dragon's face and she stabs it square in the eye. While Cersei continues watching her, Sira orders her to leave and stop wasting her time. Finally, Cersei realizes that she's endangering Sira's life by distracting her, and she leaves the house at last. After Cersei leaves, Sira taunts the dragon to face her. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, the barbarian warriors tie down another dragon. With the creature restrained, Vior charges up and cuts off its neck. Then, he asks the soldiers how many other dragons are invading the village. One soldier informs him that there are still 3 other dragons left, so Vior tells him to search for any villager who hasn't evacuated yet. The soldier agrees. While Vior thinks that Sira must be safe since Cersei would have helped her escape, after addressing his own worries, he rallies the barbarians to cover the rest of the village and takes down 2 more of the remaining dragons. After defeating the other 2, Vior wonders where the last one is. Suddenly, Cersei comes rushing to him without Sira behind her. She tells Vior that a dragon attacked the house where they were staying, and before she can even complete her sentence, Vior flies past her. Near the house, Sira runs away from the dragon, realizing that the flying creature is faster than her out in the open. Unable to escape its fast speed, she turns around and prepares for a last stand. Although the dragon is also exhausted from the long fight, it still lunges towards Sira at a blinding speed. This time, its sharp beak breaks the tongs, leaving Sira with nothing to defend herself. Finally, she thinks that after taking pity on her defenseless enemies, she can die as a knight with her honor still intact. As the dragon approaches her to deliver the final blow, Sira closes her eyes, not even bothering to put up a struggle. But right when she prepares for death, Vior comes rushing behind her, screaming at her to cover her ears. Shocked, Sira does as she is told, and suddenly, Vior roars loudly at the dragon. His booming voice blows the poor creature's eardrums out, and Vior takes this chance to slice it apart. Watching the dragon fall in front of her, Sira remains stunned as Vior apologizes for being late. He then sincerely thanks her for risking her own life to save his precious people. Finally, Vior expresses his relief that she's still okay. Hearing the sincere concern in his voice, tears start flowing down Sira's face. At this moment, she feels confused as to why she's crying, but the tears continue pouring down. Vior silently smiles at her and then carries her back to the village, knowing she's in no condition to be walking. As Cersei notices him returning, she yells out in joy, while Sira allows Vior to treat her like a princess. Later that night, the barbarians hold a feast to celebrate Sira's victory and the defense of their village. While Sira tries to forget what happened, she still feels embarrassed about crying in Vior's arms like a little girl just a few hours back. At this moment, Cersei praises her for protecting her people. She admits that she never expected a smug noble from the west to risk their own life for others, so now she sees Sira in a different light. Hearing this, Sira finally forgives herself for acting a little spoiled after her life and death battle. Then, her attention shifts to how manly Vior looked when saving her. While Sira gets something else to blush about, a tiny fairy calls out to her. When Sira turns towards the voice, she spits out her drink in shock, thinking she's hallucinating from stress. However, the 3 fairies start dancing in front of her, so she finally realizes that they're real. Then, Vior approaches her, saying that she's about to get an even bigger surprise. Behind him, a bunch of tribal elders from different races show up to meet Sira for the first time. Seeing all the dwarves, elves, and spirits, Sira feels like she's been teleported into a fantasy world. Nearby, one of the dwarf elders gives her a sword as a meeting present for the barbarian chief's wife. Sira refuses the gift out of courtesy, but Vior tells her that she'll snatch it in a heartbeat after seeing its masterful craftsmanship. She hesitates, but finally takes a look at the blade. After careful observation, Sira notes that the blade is beautifully crafted, while still retaining its sharp edge to provide cutting power in a fight. As she admires the blade's body, the dwarven blacksmith explains that he crafted it from a precious metal known as mithril. Sira is surprised, and the dwarf starts bragging even more about his work. However, Vior interrupts them to introduce all of the new chiefs to Sira. He starts with the dwarves, who are the elders of the Quefto clan, known as Vas, Guans, and Balhath. Then, he introduces the Ixt elder Karka and the spirit elder as Nimhala. Finally, Vior introduces the fairy chief Vufumek to Sira, who feels like she's dreaming. Vior reassures her that they're all real, but Sira feels nervous around around them. Karka tells her to relax, knowing that it's her first time seeing creatures so strange. Then, Nimhala gives her a special tea blend to enjoy, but she reveals that it's even stronger than medical sedatives. Hearing the chatter of these magical creatures, Sira admits that she is learning about a whole new side of the world. Vior explains that she never saw them before because the magical creatures avoid the West, so Sira wonders why they're now meeting her so eagerly. Vior reminds her that he specifically arranged this meeting so the elders could get to know her. He reveals that after his own barbarian tribe, called the Cornum tribe, the other 4 tribes join with them to form the 5 Great Tribes Alliance. Although Vior is the future Great Chief of the 5 tribes, this position is only chosen after a ritual performed by the spirits. He explains that since the 5 tribes each have their own skills and cultures to offer, they live in harmony and support each other with their strengths and rely on the others to cover for their weaknesses. However, he completely ruins the serious mood by claiming that the alliance doesn't really do anything unless the 5 tribes are in a grave crisis. Then, Sira wonders if the invasion from her kingdom counted as grave crises for the alliance. Hearing this, all the tribal chiefs start laughing, and Vior apologizes to Sira for their response. He explains that the alliance doesn't get involved in territorial disputes, so Sira wonders if their wars simply look like animal fights to them. Vior thinks that people aren't much different from animals anyway, so she shouldn't feel embarrassed about it. He also points out that the alliance was created for a different purpose. Sira wonders what it is, so Vior reveals that there is a threat far greater than the dangerous dragons she has seen. Although dragons can be strong and hard to defeat, Vior explains that there are creatures called fiends which are living menaces to society. Even the mighty Vior admits that he'd rather fight 1,000 wars against Ildoran than fight a group of vicious fiends. Sira wonders what kind of monsters are terrifying enough to scare him, and even the tribal chiefs lose their cheerful attitude at the thought of facing them. To change the topic, the chiefs go back to celebrate and encourage Vior to build a successful legacy with Sira. Vior reassures Sira that the elders genuinely respect her. He reveals that all the gifts she's wearing, including her clothes and necklace, were handcrafted by the elders to welcome her to their tribes. Then, Karka also reveals that he enchanted her sword so it will always repair itself automatically. Sira wonders if such a thing is possible, but Vior reassures her that Ixt magic is very powerful. Seeing how the different races collaborate with their strengths to support each other, Sira starts thinking that the barbarian lands aren't a bad place at all. The next day, Circe wakes up Sira with a scare. After getting up, she wonders if her meeting with the magical creatures last night was a dream. However, Sira spots the enchanted sword nearby, so she knows the meeting was real. Behind her, Vior comes over to greet her. When Sira turns around, she gets flustered because he shaved his beard again. Vior enjoys her flustered reaction, and he turns around after calling her for lunch. Circe suddenly shoves a sandwich into Sira's mouth. Sira realizes that the sandwich is delicious. She wonders where the meat came from, so Circe tells her that it's from the same dragon she killed. Sira thinks that barbarian poultry is great, while Circe is shocked that she's treating dangerous dragons like common birds. After Sira eats her fill, Vior asks her to come with him to meet someone she knows. Sira wonders who would know her in the barbarian tribe, but Vior lets it remain a surprise. Sometime later, they reach an ordinary house where a woman awaits them. The lady greets Sira with a smile and praises her for defending an ordinary family from a ferocious dragon. Sira wonders who she is since she can't recognize her at all. Hearing this, the lady realizes she has changed over the past few years. She explains that she's Nylia, a former knight who served under Sira a few years ago. Hearing her name, Sira recalls Nylia, who was a passionate young woman. Ever since coming under her service, Nylia acted as Sira's right-hand man and joined her for many important operations. Together, the two of them fought bravely against the barbarians, both of them wanting to get their resources for the Ildoran kingdom. Unfortunately, during one mission, Sira was separated from Nylia, who was defeated by a barbarian soldier and taken captive. As she recalls this, Sira's jaw drops, and she wonders if the woman standing in front of her really is the Nylia from all those years ago. She then notices Nylia's huge belly, who tells her that she's pregnant with her second child. Hearing this, Sira's whole world turns upside down, so Nylia takes her inside her house to catch up. There, she explains that after the barbarians started talking about the Crystal Helmet Knight, she figured they had captured her former captain. Sira is surprised that she found a husband to settle with. Nylia explains explains that the soldier who defeated her also proposed to her, so she accepted his offer and settled in his village. After living her past years so peacefully with her husband and family, she feels like her days as a hot-blooded young knight belong to another person. Sira wonders why she asked Vior to invite her here, since a common person shouldn't call the great chief to run ordinary errands. However, Nylea explains to her that barbarians don't have such formalities about status. She also thinks that Vior is quite a helpful young man, so she often asks him for his help. Hearing this, Sira thinks she's joking since Vior looks like an old uncle. However, Nylea then tells her that he's only 18 years old, which leaves her completely stunned. Sira starts coping and claims that a boy as young as Vior could never have a full beard. Vior doesn't mind her teasing, and he explains that he helps Nylea a lot since her husband is his cousin. Still, Sira refuses to move past his young age, so Nylea points out that Sira turns 26 this year. While Sira feels exposed, Vior thinks her age is perfect for marriage. Sira still refuses to accept his compliment, so Vior wonders if he could have convinced her to marry him if she had met him at a younger age. Suddenly, Sira smacks her blade down and declares that no matter which time they had met, she would never become the wife of an enemy. Vior is stunned for a bit, but then he starts laughing at her serious display. Suddenly, he apologizes to Sira for being rude. Cersei wonders why Vior's attitude shifted for no reason, so Nylea asks her how injured Sira was when the barbarians captured her. Cersei reveals that Sira wasn't injured at all, but her sword had shattered during the fight. Hearing this, Nylea points out that Vior couldn't truly defeat Sira, and he only destroyed her blade. She explains that in normal circumstances, a knight and a warrior may fight to the death, or until the other party is unable to fight any longer. However, in Vior's case, despite his incredible strength advantage over Sira and his durable enchanted sword, he only won because her ordinary sword was destroyed, not because he actually landed a hit on her. Nylea points out that if Vior were to fight Sira with the same equipment, the next fight might just end in his own death. Hearing this, Cersei gulps in shock, but Nylea admits that having better equipment than the opponent is also a war strategy. She also recalls that Vior didn't use his thundering voice against Sira, so perhaps he could turn things around in a real fight. Still, she thinks that Vior can't brag about defeating her at all, which leaves him completely embarrassed. Sira remains silent, so Vior feels grateful that fate allowed him to defeat her that day. Soon, Nylea's husband, Vidal, returns home. His face lights up in joy at seeing Vior. Vidal then hands over his son to Nylea, who holds him close, watching their peaceful family together. Sira recalls her days with Nylea as a knight. Back then, Nylea was determined to destroy the barbarians and seize their lands for her own people, but now, she has settled down with the very same people in a very peaceful life. Sira admits that Nylea looks a lot happier as a housewife than a bloodthirsty soldier, but she quickly gets embarrassed by her own thoughts. Then, Vidal and Nylea get up to make dinner for them. Later that night, Sira is alone with her thoughts at the beach. When Vior walks up to her, she admits that she used to know nothing about the lands of the barbarians. Despite her ignorance, Sira marched forward with the intention of killing these innocent people and seizing their lands, although she still hopes to bring back something useful to save her own people. Sira admits that fighting the innocent tribes is wrong. She admits that Vior doesn't deserve to be treated as an enemy, but she also declares that she's still loyal to the people of her kingdom. With the duty to her people on her shoulders, Sira thinks there's no way she can marry Vior. He thinks that her feelings are valid, but suddenly, Sira admits that her personal feelings are different from her professional duties as a knight, as she shyly suggests that marriage wouldn't be so bad. Vior teases her for saying one thing and changing her mind in the next second. The next day, Vior teases her about her actions last night. Sira claims that it was just in the heat of the moment, so Vior acts disappointed. However, she finally realizes that she can't hide her feelings and admits that those feelings came from the bottom of her heart. Meanwhile, near the barbarian lands, a team of priests from the Eldoran kingdom, led by priestess Malchus, advances towards Sira's location. Malchus mutters under her breath, furious that the savage barbarians continue to kidnap her nation's heroines and keep blocking their resources. As the team continues to move, they suddenly stop after seeing a bush rustling nearby. All of the exhausted soldiers prepare themselves for another dragon, but they relax after seeing it's just a deer. Even in this dangerous situation, Malchus remains calm and holds out a thick spellbook. She reminds the soldiers that even if they are surrounded surrounded by the strongest enemies they can win using their magic powers. However, everyone doesn't believe the arrogant Malchus's words. They remind her that they're all running out of supplies, and it won't be long before the dangerous lands completely exhaust them. Facing her subordinates' protests, Malchus gets even bolder. She questions their dignity as soldiers and wonders if they're all happy to return home as failures, just like every other expedition team. As the soldiers grow silent, Malchus declares that the only way they can return victorious is by rescuing their precious knight Scylla and conquering the barbarian lands once and for all. Meanwhile, back at home, Scylla keeps herself busy by chopping firewood with her new sword. Circe wonders why she's working so hard, so Scylla tells her that her warrior skills will grow dull if she stays inside the house all day. Circe realizes that Scylla is simply bored of her peaceful life, and Scylla admits that she misses all the combat and strategy meetings. Then, Circe reminds her that if she's so bored of living peacefully every day, she can help her out with all the house chores. Hearing this, Scylla explains that she doesn't know how to do them since her grandfather never let her do dirty grunt work. After learning about Scylla's privileged lifestyle, Circe tells her that she won't be bored for the day. She points to the distance, where a group of barbarians is approaching their house from. Soon, a pack of barbarians led by Vior stops in front of the house, and Vior himself asks Scylla if she wants to spar with the warriors of his village. Circe explains that this was Vior's meat-headed way of fighting Scylla's boredom, but Scylla is excited beyond belief at the chance of fighting real warriors. Before they can begin fighting, Vior asks Circe to bring out Scylla's armor. Scylla is surprised that they still have her knight armor, so Circe explains that she simply cleaned and stored it after taking it off her body. Unfortunately, the crystal guard on Scylla's helmet is still broken, so she can only wear the rest of the armor. Still, Scylla is impressed that Circe was able to take the armor off her unconscious body, since Eldoran armor requires proper training to wear and remove. Once Scylla is ready, she goes out and welcomes all the challengers ready to fight her. Seeing the legendary crystal helmet in person, all the barbarian warriors get eager to fight. However, they all have to wait their turn since the sparring will be one-on-one. For the first match, a courageous young soldier called Raham goes up to face Scylla. Vior introduces both opponents to each other. Then, he signals the start of the match, and Raham tells Scylla to fight him with everything she's got. Unfortunately, she actually listens to him. She ends up defeated on the ground after just a single move. Then, Raham's father steps up to avenge his son, but he also gets destroyed just as easily. After these two chumps go down, a proper warrior called Ciro goes up to face Scylla. Before they can start fighting, Ciro thanks her for defeating the bird-headed dragon. He explains that the people Scylla protected that day were actually his relatives, so he's immensely grateful to her. Scylla feels surprised, but then Ciro puts on his helmet to get ready for their fight. He charges in and lashes out with his dual swords, but Scylla blocks both of his attacks before knocking him down. Watching the experienced soldier lose so easily, the barbarians are shocked by Scylla's strength. Then, she goes on to defeat every other barbarian warrior except Vior himself. Watching the fights, even Circe is shocked by Scylla's power. Viufumek explains that Scylla is so strong because of her willpower. Circe doesn't understand the concept of willpower, so Viufumek tells her that every race in the 5 great tribes has a long lifespan, with the exception of the Cornum barbarians. Because the other races' lives so long, they have a cheerful and laid-back attitude. However, the barbarians do not have the luxury of long lives, so they are a lot more passionate and courageous about achieving their goals. Because of this, they are able to fight all out with their willpower, which is a strong desire to fulfill their dreams. In the end, when there is a battle between two evenly matched warriors, victory comes to the person with the stronger will to win. As the fairy explains this, Vior and Scylla have their own sparring match. Finally, the fight goes on for longer than 2 moves as both warriors clash evenly, with their willpowers blazing. Neither side backs down, and they continue to give it their all. In the end, both Scylla and Vior break their wooden training swords, so the match ends in a tie. All of the barbarians cheer for the amazing fight, and Vior feels relieved that he can still hold his own against Scylla when fighting with the same equipment. He then asks her if she's still bored. Scylla feels incredibly refreshed after all the amazing fights, so she thanks Vior for helping her. Just then, an old man rushes over in a panic, announcing that an injured land dragon is moving towards their village. With no time to waste, Vior heads out with Scylla, and the barbarians dragons to handle this new threat. As they all wait in the forest, Sira notes that the dragon is much stronger than the bird heads she fought in the village. Still, she wonders why so many dragons are attacking the village despite being peaceful creatures. Even the bird heads knew to avoid the barbarians, so Sira wonders if an outside force is secretly manipulating these beasts to attack the barbarians. She then recalls how serious Vior looked when he learnt about the appearance of this dragon. However, she gets no time to relax as the barbarian soldiers attract the rampaging dragon towards the trap. Once the beast appears, Sira prepares to take action, while Vior guides the soldiers to lure the dragon his way. As the dragon chases them, it steps on a trap in the ground and loses its footing. At the same time, some hidden men throw out giant ropes to restrain the creature. With the dragon bound in one place, Sira jumps out of her spot and lands on its head. Without giving it any time to free itself, she drives her sword straight into the creature's eye and head, killing it instantly. After the dragon goes down, all of the barbarians celebrate their victory. Then, they all start cleaning up the creature's corpse. Sira is impressed by the dragon's massive size, so Vior explains that this one is a true dragon compared to the bird heads. He reveals that a long time ago, the Morasubari dragon species used to have wings instead of 6 legs. Using the power of these wings, the dragons were able to fly in the sky. Sira feels terrified at the thought of such a large flying creature, and Vior tells her that there are still other dragons that can fly. He mentions the flying flame dragons of the mountains, which remind Sira of the fantastical creatures from fairy tales. Then, one of the men cleaning the dragon calls Vior to inspect it. He shows him a mark on the dragon's body, which seems to be the injury that caused it to go insane. Vior notes that although the wound is a strange burn mark, even elven magic cannot cause such an injury. Sira wonders if the injury was caused by magic, so Vior nods. However, he asks her if someone from Ildoran injured this dragon, since he's confident that none of the 5 tribes can use magic like this. Sira doesn't think any of her people can use such magic either, but then she remembers the church, known as the Order of Commoners. The priests of the church usually use their light magic to heal soldiers and pray at their funerals. Still, she has never heard of the church using such strange, offensive magic. Before they can discuss it further, Vufumek arrives to inform them that she has found some unknown magic users nearby. She mentions that these magic users are casting spells without an elemental catalyst, which can cause a curse called the Blight to appear. Hearing this, Vior is shocked, and he orders half of his men to quickly clean up the dragon and leave to guard the village back home. Sira wonders what a blight is, so Vior explains that blights appear when someone goes against the natural order, as a force that opposes nature itself. Wherever a blight appears, it summons a dangerous fiend. After hearing this name, Sira realizes that the magicians are creating a real threat to the barbarians. Nearby, Malchus and her soldiers struggle to fight a dragon. Despite her soldiers' weakness, she refuses to back down and takes out her spellbook. Meanwhile, Vior and the others rush towards the priest's location. As they arrive, they spot a dead dragon drop to the floor, freshly defeated by Malchus's spell. As Sira spots the deranged priestess closing her spellbook, she rushes towards her. Malchus is pleasantly surprised that Sira is alive and well, but when she notices Vior and the other barbarians, her expression changes. Vior wonders if Sira knows these people, so she explains that they're from her home kingdom. Watching them speak with such familiarity, Malchus is outraged and wonders if Sira has betrayed her nation. She reminds her that all barbarians are savages who deserve to die, but Sira tells her to calm down. However, the insane priestess refuses to change her worldview. She points out that the Ildoran kingdom has been trying for centuries to conquer the barbarian lands for their people, so there's no way they can ever stop. Then, she wonders if the barbarians have corrupted Sira's mind. Sira feels embarrassed by her accusation and makes it clear that she's not brainwashed. Still, it feels like she's talking to a brick wall, since Malchus refuses to listen. In the depths of her insanity, she starts chanting a malevolent spell to attack the barbarians. Seeing the spell's power, Sira realizes that all those dragons were provoked by Malchus and her magic. Meanwhile, Malchus declares to Sira that even fate supports the Ildoran kingdom since they are on the righteous side. However, Vior warns her that by refusing to use the power of earth and nature as catalysts for her magic, she has committed a grave mistake. Malchus remains silent, and then she asks Sira to return home with her. Sira refuses to go, so Vior asks Malchus if she's willing to negotiate negotiate things with him. This only serves to enrage Malchus, and she finally releases a powerful offensive spell to punish Syrah. Luckily, Vior stands in front of her to protect her from the attack. Despite taking the brunt of the attack head-on, Vior remains standing there without any injuries. Malchus thinks she has won, but then she realizes that her enemy is completely unharmed. Unimpressed, Vior warns her that a pathetic spell like hers could never penetrate his willpower. After declaring this, Vior pulls Syrah to his side, happy that she has chosen him. Seeing this, Malchus goes completely berserk and starts casting more and more magic to attack Vior. Under the intensity of her hatred, even the surroundings start to shake as an evil aura surrounds Malchus. Viufumek realizes that Malchus has corrupted the nature around them, while Vior notes that the insane priestess is beyond saving. All of a sudden, the evil aura around Malchus completely disappears, and dark tentacles emerge from the ground to trap her body. In an instant, the priestess is seized by a mass of unforgiving black rage. Syrah steps up to help Malchus, but Vior prevents her from going ahead. Despite Malchus's actions, Syrah still wants to stand up for a person from her kingdom. However, Vior explains in a grave voice that Malchus has summoned the Blight. In this moment, one of the tentacles approaches the terrified priestess, an ominous eye opening at its tip. In an instant, countless eyes open in the body of the dark tentacles, and Vior declares that a dangerous fiend has appeared. As Syrah watches in horror, the vicious fiend starts dissolving Malchus's clothes and body. Vior thinks that it's too late to save her, but perhaps they can let her die with an intact corpse by killing the fiend as quickly as possible. Nearby, Malchus struggles and calls for help, so one of her knight attacks the fiend. Initially, the knight manages to cut through a few tentacles. However, he's unable to advance further as more tentacles keep regrowing. Suddenly, one tentacle restrains the knight's leg from underground before the fiend effortlessly kills him. Then, the fiend kills the rest of Malchus's soldiers while she watches on helplessly. After eliminating the knights, the fiend starts focusing on devouring Malchus. It starts wiping out her core memories to erase her mind, making the priestess scream in terror and pain. At this, Vior alerts the barbarians to attack the fiend, but Syrah is the quickest to charge ahead. She thinks that the barbarians have no reason to save Malchus since she attacked their village, but as a knight of Ildoran, she still feels responsible for protecting her own people. She cuts through the advancing tentacles and keeps moving forward, determined not to let another Ildoran civilian fall. After learning about the power of willpower, Syrah feels a burst of confidence and thinks she can defeat even the fiend. She climbs on top of the fiend's body to get closer to Malchus, but the fiend refuses to let her get any closer. Then, it catches Syrah off guard and catches her with its tentacles as well. As Syrah struggles in the fiend's grip, Vior uses his thundering voice to stun the creature. His attack parts a big layer of tentacles, exposing the fiend's inner core. To protect itself, the fiend quickly releases Syrah, who rejoins the barbarians. After Vior saves her, Syrah tells him that she doesn't want to get protected. However, Vior explains that he wants to support her in defeating the fiend. Syrah wonders why the barbarians are willing to help her protect their enemy, so Vior reminds her that she is someone who has protected many of their precious villagers. To repay Syrah's immense debt, the barbarians don't mind fighting for Malchus for her sake, even if she's their enemy. Although Syrah is caught off guard by the barbarians' big hearts, the group has no time for emotional catch-ups. Syrah turns back to the fiend and asks Vior if he's got a plan. He explains that he can expose the fiend's inner core by using his thundering voice, so Syrah can get the chance to attack the fiend while the barbarians distract it. Vior asks if Syrah is comfortable with delivering the final blow, and she nods with confidence. Then, he uses his thundering voice skill to stun the fiend. The fiend's core is once again exposed by the powerful shockwaves, so it rushes to cover it. However, Syrah cuts through the unfinished protection, while the other barbarians keep the fiend's tentacles away from her. This gives her the chance to pierce through the fiend's malicious core, ending its life once and for all. After the fiend is defeated, the evil within its body is purified, turning into a brilliant glow that showers over everyone. Syrah lands back on the ground, but not before Malchus lands on top of her head with her heavy body. Afterward, the barbarians take Malchus back to their camp as a prisoner of war. Once the priestess wakes up, she is shocked by the prisoner's clothes and shackles binding her body. Vior and Syrah enter her cell to check on her. At the sight of the hulking Vior, Malchus thinks he's going to assault and humiliate her before murdering her as revenge. In a fragile attempt to protect her dignity, she warns warns Vior that he will incur divine punishment by assaulting a priestess. Watching her panic, Cersei wonders how Malchus was acting so tough out in the forest. Vior also feels frustrated, thinking there's no way this insane girl will listen to him. Malchus naturally thinks that she would never talk to savages. Before realizing that Syrah is nowhere to be seen, she thinks she failed in her mission to save Syrah, but Vior calls Syrah behind him to convince Malchus. However, Syrah is too busy fidgeting in embarrassment as she realizes Malchus is acting in the same bashful way as her on the day she was captured. Vior thinks she shouldn't compare her suffering to anyone else, but Malchus gets enraged that he's talking so intimately with her. Then, Syrah tells her that she no longer considers the barbarians as her enemy. This sentence turns Malchus's world completely upside down, since she thinks that the barbarians want to destroy Eldoran for invading their land. Syrah reveals that the barbarians don't actually hate the Eldoran kingdom, but even she doesn't know why they're so forgiving towards a hostile nation. Syrah also tells Malchus that the barbarians helped save her while she was trapped by the fiend. This leaves her completely silent, so Syrah reminds Malchus it's a bad practice to repay someone's kindness with hostility. Seeing how much Syrah has assimilated into barbarian culture, Malchus starts crying, thinking that the barbarians have defiled and brainwashed her. While everyone else in the room is horrified by her disgusting allegation, Malchus keeps crying. Vior wonders what is wrong with the woman's head, so Syrah explains that the priestess admires female knights a little too much. Suddenly, Malchus points to Syrah's outfit, reminding her that it's incredibly revealing and inappropriate. She assumes that Syrah has been turned into the barbarians' plaything, but Syrah reassures her that they just gifted her clothes that match their culture. Still, Malchus refuses to listen to her. She tells Syrah that if the legendary Princess Wisteria were still alive, she would be incredibly disappointed by her actions. Hearing her name, Syrah grows quiet and thinks she might be right. At this moment, Vior speaks up. He realizes that the Eldoran people consider Wisteria dead since she's been missing for over 20 years. Malchus warns him not to speak of their legendary knight so carelessly, but Vior ignores her. However, he suddenly claims that he can easily arrange a meeting with Wisteria. As both Syrah and Malchus watch in shock, Vior reveals that the missing legendary knight Wisteria is actually his mother. Both Malchus and Syrah scream in absolute horror, and they wait for Wisteria after calming down. While sipping some tea, Syrah thinks it makes sense that Wisteria is Vior's mom, since she was their strongest knight after all. Malchus thinks that Vior is simply trying to trick them, but Syrah tells her the barbarians have a tradition of marrying powerful female knights, so he's probably speaking the truth. She tells Malchus about Nylia, another knight who has married within the barbarians and settled in the tribe. Then, Syrah also tells Malchus that she's interested in Vior herself. Malchus is unable to speak from the utter shock she is experiencing, while Syrah reminds her that she has yet to marry Vior. Cersei teases her, wondering why she doesn't marry him if she likes the man so much. Syrah acts like she was just observing him to learn more about the barbarians' land for her own people, but Cersei is not convinced by her excuse. Then, Syrah asks Malchus why Vior would lie about knowing Wisteria since he could easily be proven wrong if he couldn't find her. Malchus has no response to this, so Syrah tells her to open her mind a little bit. Then, she recalls her memories with Wisteria from over 20 years ago. Back then, the little Syrah had lost her mother, so Wisteria was the mother and big sister figure who raised her in the army. Ever since then, Syrah admired her as her idol, and she was heartbroken after Wisteria went missing. Now, since she has a chance to see her again, she feels incredibly excited no matter her current circumstances. Suddenly, Syrah senses the heavy pressure of a knight's aura. From the room's entrance, an intimidating woman walks in, welcoming Syrah and Malchus as the wife of the tribe's great chief. Then, as Wisteria gets closer to the girls, Malchus recoils in horror, and Syrah stares nervously. Wisteria praises Syrah for her contributions to the barbarian tribe and for her relationship with her son, speaking with the grace of a true leader. All of a sudden, she drops the high and mighty act and breaks out into a familiar smile. Hearing her voice, Syrah tears up in disbelief. Regia abandons all of her graceful acting and rushes towards Syrah, hugging her tightly and fawning over her. She complains that she had wanted to see Syrah earlier, but she had to wait in case her appearance caused Vior trouble. Then, Vior walks inside, watching his mother torture the poor Syrah. He tells her to stop harassing the girl, but Regia turns around and asks him how far along long he has managed to court Syrah. After she flips the script, it's Vior's turn to be embarrassed, and he tells his mother that he's trying to win over Syrah's heart. Hearing this, she starts laughing at him, thinking that he'd never get a girl acting so prim and proper. As Rija continues to tease her son and future daughter-in-law, Malchus looks on in awe. She wonders if this giant brute really is the Night Princess of Legends, so Rija turns to look at her. She notes that Malchus is from the Order of Commoneras, who she thinks are a cult full of liars. Naturally, Malchus gets offended by her remark, so Rija ignores her, saying that she doesn't care about useless history anyway. Then, some ladies knock on the house to call Vior and Rija over. Rija gets up for an event and tells everyone to come with her, so Syrah wonders what's happening. Rija explains that since Syrah helped defeat a rampaging dragon and an even more terrifying fiend, the tribe is hosting a celebratory feast in her honor. Afterward, everyone goes out to the beach and enjoys a grand feast. Watching the barbarians prepare the dragon meat, Syrah notes that they make sure to use every single part of the animal. She thinks that the barbarians do this to honor the animal's life, so they prevent its body from going to waste. Feeling the people's sincere emotions, Syrah feels happy that she decided to settle here. She then focuses on the tasty treat in her own hands. Vior comes over to eat with her and offers her an even tastier snack with the delicious sauce on it. After taking a single bite, Syrah instantly falls in love with the juicy meat. Vior explains that dragon meat tastes incredible if it's well preserved, so it's a highly valuable trade good. Surprised, Syrah keeps enjoying the valuable delicacy in her hands. Then, Rija comes over and gives her some good liquor that will send her off the planet. Although Syrah is terrified by the drink, she accepts it and drinks it in private. Meanwhile, Malchus watches, completely shocked by how depraved she's being. Nearby, Circe offers her some meat. Malchus acts like she's too good to accept food from savages, but her stomach starts complaining about her self-righteousness. Circe taunts her for refusing the food despite being so hungry, wondering why she's so obsessed with her pride. Then, she explains that although she hates the commoners for their lies and evil actions, long ago, a priest from Ildoran gave her some food out of charity. Malchus is surprised, so Circe tosses some hot meat straight into her mouth. After struggling with the food, the priestess grows quiet. Circe reminds her that Syrah saved her life with a lot of hard work, so she should cherish it instead of endangering her own survival. As Malchus finally accepts the food, she starts crying, thinking about all the knights who came with her. Knowing that the knights died because she was too stubborn to stop chasing after Syrah, Malchus blames herself for causing their deaths and making it out alive. Circe feels upset too, but she tells Malchus that those knights made a choice to join her, so it's not her fault if they died supporting her cause. The priestess's survivor's guilt and sentiment for her fallen comrades stir something in Circe's heart, and she feels incredibly upset thinking about the value of life for Ildoran's people. Elsewhere, Syrah sits with Rija to reminisce about their past. Rija is happy that Syrah is adjusting so well to the barbarian tribe. She compliments how good the engagement necklace looks on her, but Syrah is too stunned to accept her praise. She finally realizes that the necklace had a deeper meaning, but she never realized it since Ildoran people perform engagements with rings. Rija explains that barbarians use necklaces instead of rings since their people frequently lose their limbs from dragon attacks. Then, she also reveals that the barbarians adopted the practice of engagement gifts out of respect for Ildoran culture. Before they started accepting Ildoran knights, the barbarians had no formal marriage ceremonies, so their tribal relationships were quite wild. Hundreds of years ago, when the barbarians first found the Ildoran forces, they started returning to their land with some prisoners of war. Eventually, those prisoners would fall in love with the barbarians and settle in their tribes. Now, after so many years, it's quite common for the barbarians to have a few Ildoran people in their family. After explaining this, Rija explains that she doesn't mind Syrah's relationship with Vior at all, although she thinks Syrah has the freedom to choose whoever she wants. She encourages Syrah to go for Vior if she truly likes him. However, Syrah thinks she doesn't deserve romance with Vior since she has a duty to her people. Syrah thinks she doesn't deserve happiness before completing her mission, but Rija wonders how she can make other people happy before experiencing happiness herself. She tells Syrah to think hard and figure out what she wants to do, so Syrah falls into deep thought after she leaves. A few minutes later, Vior walks up to her, explaining that the tribal alliance is holding a cleansing ceremony enemy soon. Syrah wonders what it is, so Vior tells her that she's about to find out one of their land's biggest secrets. The next night, Syrah finds herself in a dream, surrounded by a world of water. Confused, she looks around and spots a bunch of flashing lights in the water. Suddenly, a massive aquatic creature appears before her. Syrah wonders if it's a fish, but then she realizes it looks similar to the dragon she helped defeat the other day. Then, the dragon tells Syrah that it's glad it chose her. This leaves her completely stunned, but before she can ask it anything, the dream ends. After waking up, Syrah feels disoriented by her strange dream. She wonders if the spirit of the dragon she defeated somehow infected her body. Then, a muffled voice comes from nearby as Syrah realizes she has squished Vufumek with her hand. Meanwhile, in the barbarian village, Malchus watches with Circe as everyone else prepares for the great cleansing ritual. Since this is Malchus's first time in barbarian lands, she is shocked by the fairies and elves, just like Syrah was when she first saw them. Malchus keeps on panicking about the fairies and elves, so Circe tells her to believe they exist, just like the fairy tales her cult church told her. While the poor priestess is shocked into silence, Regia, Vior, and Syrah walk over to her. Regia reminds Malchus that she's the one who caused the blight of the fiend, which is why they're making her attend the cleansing ceremony. Malchus tries to protest, but Karka tells her it's important to face the consequences of her own deeds. Suddenly, Vior asks Malchus if she remembers her name. She wonders why he's asking for such a private detail, and then thinks about her past for a bit. Malchus recalls that she was given her surname by an abbot, but when she tries to think of her real name, she's unable to remember what she was called. Malchus tries searching through her memories, but she's unable to remember anything beyond 6 or 7 years ago. Syrah is shocked by this, but Vior was fully expecting it. He explains that Malchus lost her memories because of the fiend, but thankfully, she was able to escape before she could entirely lose her personality. Circe thinks that Malchus is better off without any memories of the cult, which angers her even more. In the face of Malchus's anger, she keeps taunting her even more. This causes her to lash out, and both girls start struggling against each other in a fierce fight. Vior wonders if they should stop the fight, but Syrah tells him it won't be dangerous at all. Meanwhile, Regia eggs them on, eager to see a full fight. First, Circe pins Malchus to the ground, feeling like she has already won. Somehow, Malchus flips her around and turns the tables completely. She proudly brags that she has always been fit to go on expeditions, so she can handle a little bit of hand combat just fine. Then, Malchus starts pulling at Circe's cute cheeks and reminds her that she received charity from the church long ago. This means that Circe is originally from Ildoran, but she silences Malchus before she can say the rest of the things. Finally, after choking her into unconsciousness, Circe takes the win. Syrah sighs, preparing herself to carry Malchus's dead weight. With the priestess out of commission, Regia thinks it's a great chance for the three girls to have a bath at the river. Karka also thinks it sounds good, but Syrah feels hesitant to let everyone else handle the cleansing preparations. Still, Regia reassures her that they can handle it just fine, so Syrah finally agrees. Sometime later, she moves Malchus to a safe house so she can rest. While they wait for her to wake up, Circe confirms that she is indeed originally from Ildoran. She explains that she used to be a part of Ildoran's Eastern Cultivation Corps several years ago. Syrah already picked up the clues from how Circe looked down on Ildoran's nobility culture, and the way she used to call her knight instead of warrior. However, she also knows that learning how to equip and remove armor is not a usual part of the Cultivation Corps duties. Instead of explaining why she knows, Circe tells Syrah that she'd rather leave her identity in the past. Now, she considers herself a part of the Cornum tribe, and as Vior's servant, so she asks Syrah to treat her the same. Syrah hesitates for a bit, but she nods, respecting her wishes. She then asks Circe if she wants to completely forget about her homeland, but Circe tells her that she literally can't remember it, even if she tried. Afterward, the three girls walk towards the river once Malchus wakes up. On the way there, Malchus keeps complaining about how Circe knocked her out. Circe reminds her that if she didn't send her to La La Land, she would have kept muttering about her lost memories for the rest of her life. This pisses her off even more, so Syrah asks Malchus to calm down. Malchus complains, wondering why she's being forced to stick around with Circe, even after she humiliated her in public. Finally, Circe tells her the cold, hard truth that her body stinks worse than a barn. Malchus is mortified from her accusation, but Circe points out that she smells like blood, sweat, and a whole other suspicious group of bodily fluids. She wonders about the last time Malchus ever saw a bath. So the poor priestess recalls how she had been on the expedition for the past few weeks. Embarrassed, Malchus admits that it's been over 2 weeks since she even had a shower in the wilderness. Even Syrah turns into the patting shoulder meme and tells Malchus that perhaps it's time she accepted her fate and truly cleansed her body. A few minutes later, all 3 girls relax in the great river. Malchus feels a bit unsafe, so Circe reassures her that they'll be fine since this river is Vior's territory. Even in the cool river, Malchus feels homesick for Ildoran. Syrah tells her that if she wants to stick with her, she'll have to wait a lot longer since she has no plans of returning anytime soon. Then, she tells the priestess to finish cleaning quickly and leave before she gets a cold from the water. After the girls exit the bath, they grill some fish Syrah caught from the river. Once the fish are done, Syrah and Circe eagerly take a bite. While Malchus hesitates, she finally nibbles on the fish, realizing that it tastes delicious despite the simplicity of the cooking. Suddenly, a nesting bird's call startles Malchus, and Syrah notes that it's almost time for the cleansing ceremony to begin. Later, everyone walks towards the cleansing area in a group. On the way there, some elders chat about Syrah's achievements, feeling happy that she destroyed the fiend when it was still in its cocoon. Syrah is surprised that she has become talk of the town, so Viufumek proudly tells her that it was all her doing. Nearby, Vior recalls that Syrah's heroic feat ended in quite the tragedy after Malchus dropped right on her head. Syrah immediately gets embarrassed and acts like dropping her guard was only natural after defeating a hideous foe like the fiend. Vior laughs, thinking she's being reasonable, while Viufumek tells Syrah she went around spreading the word while she was unconscious. Syrah thanks her for all the hard work, but Viufumek points out that she can't feel tired from work at all. Vior explains that since the fairies are considered a force of nature, they don't exactly feel things the way other creatures do. He also reveals that fairies might have trouble telling 2 people apart from each other, but Viufumek acts like she can easily remember all the people she considers important. Continuing to bicker, they all finally reach the cleansing site. Once there, Vior notes that the land is a huge mess. In front of everyone, a big patch of barren land stretches out, covered with white, lifeless dust. Malchus is shocked by the land's appearance, and she scraps up some white dust to observe up close. Syrah notes that this is the area where they fought the fiend, so Vior tells her that this white dust is another side effect of the blight. He reveals that while living creatures have will powers, the 4 forces of the land, earth, wind, water, and fire also have their own form of willpower. Vior explains that while the willpower of a living creature completely disappears if it's taken away, the willpower of land does not completely die out. Instead, it stagnates and becomes corrupted, forgetting the land's original state and turning it into a wasteland of white dust. After this dark explanation, Vior tells Syrah that he learned everything he knows from Karka. Karka says that he can explain things a bit further, but first, he asks to see Malchus's book, which originally caused the blight. Vior hands him the evil scripture she used, so Karka takes a look at it. While Malchus gets enraged, Circe holds her back. Karka notes that the book is full of magic that aims to turn matter into heat and light for offensive purposes. He thinks that the magic is completely worthless, but Syrah points out that Malchus was doing serious damage with it. Karka explains that even if Malchus's spells produce strong offensive power, his elf race has never used magic for violent purposes. He then notes that it's already the middle of the noon, so it's time to begin the land's cleansing ceremony. Soon, all of the barbarian races start bringing over some strange materials. Syrah watches in awe, so Karka explains that they're bringing materials representing the 4 elements as catalysts for their cleansing. After gathering all the materials, the barbarians will offer a prayer, trying to get the land to remember its original state. Soon, all of the materials are in their place, arranged in a strange formation. Karka signals to Vior to begin, so he puts on his helmet. He then stands in front of the formation's core. Karka holds his staff and concentrates, beginning to recite the cleansing chant. Although Syrah is unable to understand his words, she watches as all of the catalysts respond to Karka's call and grow in size. Karka continues to chant, increasing the ferocity of the catalysts, while Vior raises his sword and prepares to strike down. In the end, when the catalysts are at the peak of their power, Vior roars and strikes at the formation's core with his sword. His strike sends a big shockwave through the area, and Vior struggles to hold his blade down. Syrah watches in shock as the ground under underneath his blade turns fertile again, and soon, the entire white wasteland is cleansed of its grisly fate. After completing the ceremony, Vior turns around to see if Sira enjoyed it. However, he finds her crying for some reason, unable to control her tears. Afterward, all the barbarians spend their day replanting saplings in the fresh land. Sira is surprised that after the grand cleansing ritual, they're all working together like it's a simple trip. Vior asks Sira what she's thinking, so she explains that she's surprised by the simplicity of the work. He thinks that forests are saved with nothing but simple work. However, Vior also points out that if they don't perform this simple work with great care, it will cause immense problems for their future generations. Vior thinks that a person shouldn't just focus on their present, because this can easily cause them to lose sight of what the future holds. He explains that a fiend is a reflection of a self-centered person's greed, while Karka butts in and reveals that Malchus triggered a fiend by draining the land's willpower for her spells. In response, the land used that fiend to drain her memories and personality. Sira is shocked that the fiend was so vicious, but Karka tells her that Malchus is lucky she got away with just some long-term memory loss. He notes that usually, victims of a fiend don't survive the attack, so they end up losing their entire personality and sense of self. Thankfully, Malchus was saved after losing just a bit of her memories, so she can be considered a cleansed person. Meanwhile, as Malchus works to replant some saplings, Circe tells her that her name is a common name given to all orphans raised by one of the church's branches. She tells her it's best to abandon that name and move forward, so Malchus falls into thought. Afterward, Sira sits near the new forest with Vior, thinking about how terrible the blight is. She tells Vior that after seeing the barbarians' morals and their connection with nature, she finally understands the kind of people they are. Vior nods silently, seriously listening to her changed views. A few days later, Sira and Rija spar together to look back on old times. Rija praises Sira's abilities, who still holds respect for her as her senior knight. As the two of them trade blows, the fight seems to be evenly matched. Watching them spar, Malchus thinks it's incredible that Sira can hold her own against the legendary knight Reja. However, Circe points out that Reja hasn't used her full strength with dual swords yet. Indeed, when Reja starts trying harder, she easily catches Sira off guard. With a willpower charged attack, she forces Sira back. Still, Sira continues to fight on, and she knocks away one of Reja's swords. In the end, Reja uses a surprise attack by flinging dirt at Sira's face, which distracts her enough to let her take the win. After the match, Reja admits that Sira would probably defeat her if she weren't being polite because of her admiration. Sira wonders why she resorted to using dirt if she knew she'd let her win anyway. Reja explains that if she were still a pure knight, she would have fought her with all the honorable tactics of a noble. However, she points out that in the barbarian lands, Sira will face all kinds of weird monsters, so she needs to be prepared to face dirt attacks or other cheap tactics on the battlefield. Reja's explanation reminds Sira of a story. Back when Reja was still a knight, she pretended to be an ordinary girl and got kidnapped by a bunch of bandits. After the bandits took her to their base, Reja finally showed her true colors and slaughtered them all. In reality, Reja has always been free-spirited, and Sira gains even more respect for her. Then, Reja notices that she got her engagement necklace dirty with her attack. She tells Sira to wash it off, but the poor girl doesn't even know if the necklace can come off. Reja points out that there's no way they'd make something without that function, and explains that the necklace requires a burst of willpower to take off. She explains to Sira that she needs to use her willpower to wish the necklace to come off. Sira obeys and tries it out, and when she injects her willpower into the necklace, it easily pops off. Reja explains that since Sira never wanted the necklace to come off before, it stayed on her neck, but she fails to realize what it means about her feelings for Vior. A few minutes, Sira washes the necklace and tries to put it back on. Unfortunately, when she uses her willpower to reattach it, it doesn't work. Sira takes the necklace back to Reja, who tells her that there's a small ritual required to put an engagement necklace back on. She claims that Sira needs to sneak behind the person she's engaged with and pour some water over their body. Then, she must whisper in their ear and ask for her identity. If the person says her name, Sira can easily reattach the necklace to herself. Cersei watches, confused, as Risha scams Sira into believing she has to perform some kind of ritual on Vior just to wear her necklace again. Sira doesn't believe that this weird sequence of steps will help her put it on, but Regia reassures her that if she follows her ritual, she will end up wearing the necklace again. Finally, Sira leaves, determined to succeed in her mission. Cersei wonders why Regia told her so many lies, but Regia points out that she never directly claimed that the ritual was for putting the necklace back on. Instead, she hopes that if Sira gets closer to Vior, the two of them can move further in their relationship. Cersei understands why she's trying, but she thinks Regia is being unreasonable by butting into their relationship. Meanwhile, Sira prepares herself to douse Vior with an entire bucket of water without getting seen. As the poor man is handling some business with Yufa, her child points behind them. Neither of the adults knows what he's pointing to, so when they look behind them, Sira gets startled and drops the entire bucket on Vior's head. Instead of giving him an explanation, she simply escapes and reminds herself to apologize later. Afterward, Sira asks Cersei about Vior's routine. Since she wants to catch him off guard, she decides that it's best to hide in an ambush for him. Cersei tells her his routine and sends her out, after which Vior himself comes to see her. Vior asks her for Sira, so she tells her that she just went out. He starts leaving to find her, but Regia stops him, demanding to know how well his relationship with Sira is going. Regia tells Vior that if he wants to get closer to Sira, he must surprise her with a gift. Vior wonders what would be a good gift for his fiancée, so Regia thinks about it. Then, she tells him that he should get her some delicious food, but only a dish that is not commonly seen. She thinks it would make an excellent gift for Sira, so Vior nods and gets up to leave. Afterward, Cersei tells Sira that Vior has gone to water the saplings in the cleansing area. With her target acquired, Sira gets ready to go on her mission again. Before leaving, she proudly announces to Malchus that she is embarking on her journey, which only causes confusion for the poor priestess. Meanwhile, Vior looks around in the cleansing area, noting that the saplings are growing well. Sira tries to attack him from a tree, but he quickly notices her presence. She hides behind the tree, wondering how she'll ever sneak up behind him if he keeps detecting her. Vior asks Sira what she's doing, but she gets scared and runs away. Sira refuses to give up just yet. She tries to be more offensive and sneaks closer to Vior, disguised with a strange hat. Unfortunately, her hats are even more obvious than being hidden in the tree, so Vior detects her every time. Finally, Sira thinks her task is impossible, and she starts crying about it in frustration. Watching her scream at a lake, Malchus wonders if Sira needs therapy. Sira wonders if she should keep trying or give up, but she decides to try one final time using Regia's dirty strategies. Back in the house, Cersei asks Vior how the saplings are growing in the cleansed area. He tells her that everything is going fine, but then Vior mentions that he's worried about Sira. Cersei gets startled since Regia asked her to keep Sira's plan a secret from him. Still, she asks him what's wrong, so Vior tells her that Sira might be upset with him. He thinks back to her engagement necklace, recalling that he put it on her neck when she was asleep because he was afraid of getting rejected. Now that Sira isn't wearing the necklace anymore, Vior wonders if she is truly rejecting him because of his cowardice. Cersei is surprised by his concerns, but she reassures him that Sira isn't upset at all. Still, he thinks that he owes Sira an explanation and decides to confess his true feelings to her once and for all. Meanwhile, Sira asks Malchus for her help with her plan. The priestess wonders if Sira has had a change of heart, and she starts plotting to help her escape the barbarian lands. However, Sira just makes her change into her own clothes. As Vior approaches the house to talk to Sira, he finds Malchus dressed in her clothes. Unable to recognize her from a distance, he thinks it's Sira herself and starts chasing after her. However, when Vior finally catches up to Malchus, he realizes it's not Sira. Suddenly, a bucket of water drenches Vior from head to toe. Sira rushes to cover his eyes from behind, but she gets distracted by his shaven face. Still, she manages to cover Vior's eyes and ask the stupid question Regia told her to. Vior already knows who it is, but he still says Sira's name to appease her. After the ritual is over, Sira jumps back and calls for her necklace to reattach itself for her neck. To her shock, it remains completely unresponsive as if nothing happened. Watching her struggle to put the necklace back on. Vior wonders what's wrong. Sira tells him about the ritual from Reja, so he finally realizes why she was acting so strange all day. Vior tells her the obvious fact that the ritual is nonsense, so poor Sira screams out in horror. Afterward, Vior confronts Reja for duping his poor fiancée. Reja refuses to take any responsibility, so he ignores her. Sira politely decides to forgive Reja out of respect for her rank, and Reja gets angry and tells the two of them to forget it and move on. Cersei notes that since Sira respects Reja so much, she'll believe literally anything she says, so she should stop taking advantage of her. Sira then apologizes to Vior for bothering him all day. He forgives her and asks for her company instead, so Sira accepts. Watching the two of them, Reja quietly decides to follow. Late that night, Vior takes Sira out for a walk. He asks for her engagement necklace and explains that an oath is required to put it on. After his explanation, Vior asks Sira if he can put the necklace back on her. Sira combusts from the embarrassment, but she still agrees to let him put it back on. Vior is relieved that she isn't rejecting him, and he begins reciting the oath to her. He swears to the whole land about his love for Sira and places the necklace on her. Then, Vior prays that as long as Sira has feelings for him in her heart, the two of them can remain bonded together. After he completes the prayer, the necklace recognizes his feelings and easily goes back on Sira's neck. Vior asks Sira to accept his feelings, and she nods after getting over her embarrassment. Watching this scene from a distance, Reja hopes that her son has succeeded in winning Sira over. Cersei can't be bothered with him, but she points to Malchus, who is going through a crisis at the thought of her precious Sira accepting a barbarian's feelings. Reja also feels bad for her and wonders if she should comfort the poor girl. To prevent her chief from dirtying her own hands, Cersei decides to comfort Malchus instead, as Malchus's cries echo into the night. Reja notes that Vior's mission was thankfully a success. Some days later, Malchus watches as Seraphina spends her days in the barbarian tribe. As she watches Sira gather resources and spend her time like the other barbarians, she wonders if Sira has completely fallen for the enemy camp. Afraid of losing her, she reminds Sira about her plans to return to Ildoran one day. However, Malchus also points out that she's wearing the engagement necklace despite her previous words, so she wonders if Sira was sincere about her earlier promise. Sira blushes in embarrassment at being called out, and she realizes she has no defense for her actions. Seeing this, Malchus warns her that it might be reckless to jump into a marriage with the barbarians before even returning to her homeland. Sira explains that she took Reja's advice to find her own happiness, so she didn't refuse the offer to be engaged to Vior. Malchus still thinks she should think it twice, since Reja would only give her advice that benefits the barbarians, since she herself is the wife of the great chief. Finally, Sira tries to reassure Malchus that she will never forget about her noble duty as a knight. Unfortunately, her lack of conviction completely fails to convince the priestess. Malchus points out that she's being more indecisive than a toddler, so Sira tells her she's trying really hard to make a decision. Unfortunately, since she has known nothing but swords and war, she has no idea what kind of happiness exists outside of these things. Although Malchus feels bad for Sira's pitiful state, she wonders how a knight as strong as her could turn into a blushing maiden so easily. Sira explains that she was never such a strong person. Instead, she just thought she was fulfilling her duty as a noble who had the talent for war. Back then, she felt no other purpose in life, so she fell into an obsession with war. Sira knows that she may have appeared as a selfless knight to other people, but in reality, she was just an obsessed geek. However, after coming to the barbarian lands, she found out that none of the people there cared about her status as a knight captain. To them, she was just another one of those invaders from the west that raided their lands occasionally. After seeing the carefree and forgiving attitude of the barbarians, Sira started wondering if it was right of her to fight them, even if it was for the sake of her people. Although she doesn't regret her actions as a knight in the past, she doesn't know where to go in the future after learning so many new things. Malchus wonders if she's going to abandon Ildoran, so Sira thinks back to her homeland. After so many expeditions to the east, the Ildoran kingdom has gained some land over time. However, it also came at the cost of many warriors like her, so Sira wonders if the small gains were ever worth it. She knows that it's not an easy decision to choose her homeland over a place where she can truly be happy, but she'll have to make a choice between the two eventually. Soon, Cersei also comes up, saying that Sira is ruining the mood. She tells tells her to forget about the past, but Sira refuses, since she feels that she owes the barbarian people for forgiving her actions. Hearing this, Circe points out that she should stop acting so indecisive. She reminds Sira that despite her words about her duties to the Ildoran people, she's still wearing an engagement necklace from the barbarian tribe of her own free will. In her mind, Sira's choice is obvious, so she should stop pretending to be conflicted. Then, Circe's hungry stomach growls, so everyone leaves to get food. While eating, Sira thinks about all the food the barbarian lands have. She realizes that the source of all this abundant food is the dangerous woods surrounding the barbarian lands. Although the woods house dangerous dragons, even a single dragon can feed hundreds of people after a successful hunt. The barbarians could have chosen to cultivate the land for agriculture, but then they would have driven the dragons away from their habitat. In the long run, it would only cause them to lose their main food source. Sira thinks about the Ildoran kingdom as well, which has managed to claim some of the barbarians' land. Even with the extra land, their kingdom continues to be malnourished somehow. Sira wonders if the Ildoran just waste their extra food, but Vior interrupts her thoughts. He reminds her that she has bitten off too much in her thoughts, so she struggles to swallow her food down. Then, he wonders if she's still thinking about the things she discussed earlier. Sira shakes her head, explaining that she was thinking about the expeditions of the Ildoran kingdom. Although the kingdom always claims that it's raiding foreign lands to gain resources for its people, Sira doesn't think they're so righteous anymore. However, she wonders how to say this to her own people, wondering if they will feel betrayed by her words. Noting her confusion, Vior asks her to have a discussion with him outside the house. Later, both of them go outside to talk under the night sky. Sira thinks back to everything that has happened, and she wonders what path she should take, faced with so many choices. Vior tells her to just use her imagination, which surprises Sira, although she didn't expect such an impractical answer. He reminds her that sometimes it's good to give things a deep thought. Vior also reveals that the fairies can even make their own wishes come true just by wanting them. Since the power of desires can be so strong, he thinks that Sira should also focus on what she wants instead of being confused by doubts. She takes his advice and thinks about things, wondering what would happen if she returned to Ildoran with a successful discovery. As Sira thinks about defeating the barbarians, she realizes that she'll just end up in a cage after losing her job as a knight. Even though she doesn't mind sacrificing her happiness for the sake of her people, she knows that being imprisoned for the rest of her life doesn't sound like a very good idea. Then, she wonders what would happen if she left Ildoran and married Vior instead. Sira thinks about the peaceful life in the barbarian lands, filled with food and a carefree spirit. In the end, she realizes that despite his young age, Vior is extremely talented. Since he's also the future great chief, his status matches hers as a noble. Then, Sira starts to think that Vior is really suitable for her. She wonders what it would be like to become his wife and have children with him, but finally, she stops her mind from wandering too much. In the end, Sira realizes that she still doesn't have enough reasons to make one final decision. Noting her conflicted behavior, Vior feels happy. He thinks that since Sira struggled between her kingdom and marrying him, it means that she has genuine feelings for him that she's considering. Sira gets upset, pointing out that he was the one who told her to make a decision, but now he's happy that she's struggling. Then, Vior tells Sira to go on a journey with him so she can learn even more about their world before making her decision. Meanwhile, back in the Ildoran kingdom, a messenger returns to Prince Sidious from a failed expedition. After he enters the prince's room, Sidious praises the messenger for returning alive from the mission. However, he also knows that the messenger brings bad news since the entire expedition was a failure. Sidious wonders if Seraphina fell on the battlefield, but the messenger denies it. He explains that Sira's remains were never found, so she was most likely captured by the barbarians. Sidious thinks that her fate is the same as dying, but he wonders what happened to the rest of Sira's forces. The messenger reveals that since Sira took charge of facing the barbarians herself, the rest of Ildoran's forces were able to return with only light losses. Sidious thinks about this, wondering if Sira sacrificed herself so that Ildoran could continue fighting the barbarians. However, he thinks that her efforts were in vain, since it's much easier said than done to conquer the eastern lands with just another expedition. Back in the barbarian tribe, Sira wonders where Vior plans on taking her. She thinks about the elven lands, which she imagines to be an elegant city. Sira also wonders if they'll visit the natural domain of the fairies villagers or the eccentric residents of the strange dryad race. Then, she wonders if they'll visit the dwarves, whom she thinks have an advanced underground civilization. However, Sira breaks free from her own thoughts, realizing that she's just projecting her own fairy tales onto real people. Suddenly, Vior pops up out of nowhere. He reveals that the dwarves actually do have an underground city, much like her imagination. Vior also explains that the barbarians have something much more magical than advanced technology, which is called hot springs. Unfortunately, Sira has no idea what those are since her homeland is deficient in natural beauty. Vior thinks about it, wondering how to explain it to her. He tells Sira that the hot springs are a natural hot bath, but she thinks he's making it up since only the richest nobles can afford to boil water for their hot baths. Vior still tells her that the hot springs are real, and the water comes hot for free since it gets heated from underground minerals. Hearing this, Sira almost goes insane. She thinks about the barbarians who have almost infinite food, and now she's finding out that these dwarves have infinite mithril and free natural hot water. While Sira wonders why all the barbarian tribes are so filthy rich, even Malchus realizes how great a natural hot bath can be. Back in Ildoran, the poor priestess only got cold river water to bathe in, so she hopes to experience a luxurious hot bath in these new lands. However, Circe tells her that the barbarians aren't living in a fairy tale either. Although the capitals and population centers of their lands have abundant resources, she explains that their towns and villages on the outskirts are about as desolate as Ildoran. Malchus wonders what happens to these villages, so Circe tells her that if a village is too weak to fend off the surrounding dragons, all of its people turn into dragon food. Malchus is shocked that she's treating this so casually, but Circe reminds her that the world always follows the law of the jungle one way or the other. Nearby, Sira yells out in surprise after learning that the dwarves are making a special mithril helmet for her. She thinks there's no way she can pay for such an expensive item, but Vior explains that she got a huge reward for killing the huge dragon earlier. In addition, he reveals that he added his own share, along with the portion Sira got from defeating the fiend, so they can easily afford the custom helmet. Finally, Sira is convinced, and she gets excited like a little child to receive her beloved helmet. She asks Vior when the helmet will be ready, so he tells everyone to cover their ears for a moment. Suddenly, Vior roars in his thundering voice and calls for Viufumek. A few seconds later, Viufumek arrives at Vior's call. She asks if he's got a message for her, so he nods and tells her to ask the dwarf chief for a status update on Sira's helmet. Viufumek nods and leaves, surprising Sira with her abilities. Vior explains that she's a wind fairy, so she can appear anywhere where there is wind, although anyone can call a wind fairy with the right technique. At the moment, only Vior and his dad can do it successfully. Hearing this, Sira wonders if Vior is in charge of managing the internal affairs of all the tribes as the great chief's son. He nods, complaining about all the negotiations, resource divisions, and other conflicts he has to handle. In the end, Vior doesn't mind being a busy man, since he's only trying to do his best instead of doing everything perfectly. Sira smiles, thinking that despite living in a primitive homeland, Vior is an important noble just like her. Vior wonders if she's falling in love with him, so Sira gets embarrassed. Thankfully, Viufumek returns with her message just in time. She explains that the helmet will be ready in one day, so Sira and Vior start preparing to leave. The next day, Sira steps out of the house in her full armor. She wonders why they're going out in full gear, so Vior explains that the dragons occupy all of the land outside their cities. However, Sira is more concerned about how to reach the Dwarven Kingdom in time, since they live in a great mountain quite far away from their city. Vior explains that he has a special technique for this, so he cuts his thumb and summons the spirit of his barbarian ancestors. Suddenly, a glowing light appears, and it condenses into a dragon form as Vior pours his respect for the dragon race into it. Once the dragon fully forms, Vior takes off with the ladies in tow. While flying in the air, Vior looks back, noting how excited Sira is. Both of them enjoy the beautiful moment. But then, Vior notes a glowing light in the distance. He warns the girls to be careful and moves the dragon, avoiding a sudden fireball. The girls wonder where the fireball came from, so Vior tells them they've encountered a real enemy. He points in front of them, where the true master of the mountains, a fire dragon, stands, known as Gurren Neri. As the dragon attacks, Sira wonders if it's even more difficult to defeat than the Morisubari they encountered in the forest. Vior nods, but he also reminds her that the other dragon was already injured. Also, they had the support of other barbarian warriors back then, so it's not possible for them to defeat this dragon on their own. Despite their circumstances, Sira still thinks they should fight the dragon since they have no chance of escaping it in the air. Then, Vior reminds her that Malchus and Circe cannot fight the dragon, so facing it head-on is not an option. Sira wonders if they can use Vior's Echo Dragon to fight back against the Red Dragon, but he explains that it does not have any fighting capabilities since he summoned it for flight. With no other option, Sira tells Vior their best bet is to just land and fight the dragon on the ground. Vior refuses, wondering why the stupid dragon is even targeting their small group in the first place. As the fire dragon swoops in for another attack, suddenly, a squad of soldiers opens fire on it from a distance. The dragon shifts its attention to the soldiers, its tough body completely unaffected by the bullets. Sira looks around and spots a small group of dwarven soldiers shooting at the dragon from a distance. Vior realizes that their bullets aren't hurting the dragon at all, but their distraction gives him the chance to land on the ground. As he lands, the dwarf squad keeps firing at the dragon. One of the dwarf asks Vior what to do next, so he tells him to retreat since they cannot defeat this powerful creature. The dwarf leader nods and signals to the other soldiers, who begin retreating into an underground tunnel. The leader tells Sira to follow him as well, but as she turns around, she realizes the dragon is headed straight for her. Thankfully, the dwarf jumps in and uses a flashbang to confuse the dragon, which gives them all the chance to safely retreat into the tunnel. As Vior and Sira are the last ones in the tunnel, the dragon unleashes one final attack on them. Vior quickly gets down and covers Sira with his body, and the two of them wait until the fire has stopped coming for them. After a short while, the dragon stops breathing fire and takes a look around. Under Vior's black armor, it fails to see the two people hiding, so it gets bored and finally leaves the area. After the dragon leaves, Sira checks on Vior, who reassures her that he's doing fine. Then, Malchus and the others come back to reunite with the two of them. After that, the dwarf soldiers start leading the group deeper into the tunnels where their kingdom resides. Sira asks Vior if it's normal for dragons to attack random travelers, but he admits that this attack was very unexpected. The dwarf leader points out that dragons are monsters after all, so it's normal for one to go on a rampage every now and then. Then, she tells everyone to look at the city ahead of them, pointing towards a giant open area filled with metallic structures. As Sira and Malchus watch in awe, the dwarf proudly introduces them to his homeland, the Furnace Ridge. Sira looks around in wonder, shocked that the dwarves can bore such a massive hole into the volcano. She praises their incredible technology, which causes the dwarf captain to blush from embarrassment. Then, the leader introduces himself as Kamaki. Sira returns Kamaki's greeting, treating him like a male, which causes him to frown. Then, Kamaki tells his other soldiers that he'll show their guests around town. The other dwarves get jealous, but eventually, they give in to Kamaki's demand. Then, Kamaki leads everyone down a staircase. While going down, Sira notices a strange smell in the air. Vior explains that it's sulfur, so she thinks back to a military magazine she read. However, Sira doesn't make the connection just yet. After they reach the end of the staircase, Kamaki proudly shows them a giant waterfall. He explains that this water is the source of their natural hot springs, which leaves both Sira and Malchus in shock. Sira takes a look at the water, noting how hot it is. Then, Kamaki begins leading the women to the changing room, so Sira realizes they need to leave Vior behind. Once they're in the changing room, both Malchus and Circe ask Sira to remove her armor. She nods, so they begin taking it off her body. However, Sira catches Kamaki staring intensely at her, so she wonders if he's a total creep. Sira points this out to Kamaki, who panics and explains he wasn't staring at her body. Then, he takes off his mask to show his real face. Kamaki hopes that the mask will clear the misunderstanding, but Malchus and Sira are too confused to understand. Then, she finally explains that he's actually a girl, but because dwarves are so small, she just looks like a small boy. Kamaki reveals that she's actually 55 years old already, but in human terms, she's only 20 years old. Sira also apologizes to Kamaki for misgendering her, explaining that she thought all dwarves were hairy, bearded men. Hearing this, Kamaki shows the scarf around her neck, which is the source of this stereotype. She explains that dwarves usually wear scarves to protect themselves from heat and dust, but outsiders made some goofy myths out of it. Circe then starts teasing Sira for being so shocked, knowing that this exact situation was inevitable. powerful. Sira gets angry at her for keeping it a secret, while Malchus wonders why Kamaki was staring at Sira's body. Kamaki explains that she was actually staring at Sira's armor, since she would love to work on such a high-tech piece. She asks Sira if she can make some modifications to her armor, so Sira nods and offers to pay her for the work. However, Kamaki instantly refuses the payment, saying that a dwarf would never accept money from a guest. Sira insists on paying her, but Kamaki tells her that dwarves are very passionate about the crafts they love, so she won't take any payment for her work. Finally, she agrees to let her have the armor, so Kamaki calls the rest of her brothers. Out of nowhere, the other dwarves pop up, excited to work with some sweet technology, and they run out of the room with Sira's armor. Afterward, the girls go out to enter the hot spring. While admiring the natural water, Sira notes that it has a cloudy color. Kamaki explains that the color comes from sulfur, but it's actually a good thing. She goes on to reveal all the health benefits of a sulfur bath, so all the girls finally enter the bath despite their worries. After Sira gets a feel of the bath, she immediately relaxes into it. Cersei says that she came with Regia the last time she enjoyed a hot spring, so Sira recalls the fiery woman. She wonders if Regia can also call an echo dragon like Vior, so Cersei nods. Sira wonders how she can call an echo dragon of her own, so Cersei explains that she'll have to defeat a dragon by herself to earn the right to summon it. However, she warns her to stop thinking about such dangerous ideas, since even the fiercest of warriors find it difficult to face a dragon on their own. For the time being, Sira gives up her fantasies about proving her strength to a dragon and instead looks up at the ceiling. She finds a beautiful layer that looks just like the night sky, so Kamaki explains that it's actually a layer of mithril. Hearing this, Sira is shocked to learn that the precious metal is so common in the volcano. Kamaki explains that the mithril is nourished by the volcano's willpower. Since the barbarians help the volcano develop, it allows them to benefit from the mithril it produces. Then, Kamaki points to a nearby rock, which also contains mithril. She tells Sira that by injecting some of her own willpower into the rock, she can make it glow. Sira quickly walks over to the rock and injects some of her willpower into it, which causes her to experience a strange awakening. As the rock responds to her willpower, strange patterns appear over its surface. This experience causes Sira to see the image of a dragon and feel intense longing for something. Feeling something wrong, she quickly pulls back, wondering what the image was. She then wonders how she can share the dragon's feelings despite never seeing the world from its perspective. After exiting the bath, Sira meets up with Vior. She wonders where his armor went and learns that the dwarves took it just like they did with her armor. Then, Vior asks her where Malchus is, so she explains that she got overheated from the bath. Afterward, all of them start heading out of the bath towards the main city. While walking behind Vior, Sira notices a big mark on his neck. She wonders if he got the mark from the dragon's attack earlier and praises him for his incredible bravery. Vior gets embarrassed when she notices, thinking that he has lost some aura points by exposing his weakness. Once everyone gets into the main city, Kamaki serves them with a welcome feast. Sira watches all the dishes in front of her, including some exquisite seafood and potato machai. She learns that the crabs actually live in the tribe's hot springs, which causes them to gain a unique aroma and taste. However, as she goes on, she also introduces them to a dish made with snail flesh. Malchus feels disgusted by the French-looking dishes, but she doesn't dare to be rude to her host. After introducing everyone to the dwarven cuisine, Kamaki pours out some drinks for them. Sira takes a sip of the drink, and she immediately gets stunned by its fiery spice. Vior gives her some crab meat for the spice, so she gladly eats it. He then starts feeding her the rest of the food, so Sira keeps on eating it like a machine. Watching her eat from Vior's hand, Malchus feels horrified that Sira is acting so familiar with him. After everyone finishes their food, Sira apologizes for emptying the entire dwarven food stocks. Then, she keeps on walking with Kamaki, excited to get her new and improved helmet from the dwarf chief. That was episode 10. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.